Okay, so in our last video we did a little kit review of the Focke-Wulf Fw190A-3 by Tamiya. That's this aircraft right here that I think we're just going to go ahead and build this. So this is going to be part one. So let's go ahead and jump down to the bench here and see what we got to do. Let's take a look at our instructions here. So don't need the history at the moment. we'll flip on over here to step one, and that is of course the cockpit. And yeah, so it kind of looks like there's not too much items that we can actually assemble without getting them all painted up first. Also inside the fuselage there, that's going to require some painting. So we're going to have to get our fuselage halves together. Well, not put them together, of course, but get them ready for painting. So we're going to need some parts. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off all the parts that we need for the cockpit area. And we'll also cut the fuselage halves off too, because we're going to have to do some painting there. Now, you've probably noticed that I do cut my sprue gates off a little long, and that's okay though, because it really helps to be able to trim those really close to the part. So I'll go ahead and get all these parts together here. So when it comes to trimming these off, if you don't have the sprue in the way, you can get real close to these sprue gates. Now I kind of give my sprue cutters a little turn there, keeping them right up against the part, and then I snip it off. Whereas if you just snip it off crossways, just like that, sometimes you can get a little pucker that leaves a little divot in your part. Of course, these sprue gates are so small, it doesn't really matter. But normally, width-wise across the part, those sprue gates are the thinnest. So that's kind of the way you really want to try to cut them, is at their thinnest section rather than to cut it at the widest point. Does that make any sense? Well, I hope so. Next up, of course, we're going to have to do some sanding. Now, there's going to be a lot of that throughout the build, and I'm just letting you know, kind of how I do it. Now, however you do it, and if it works for you, then good. But if you find this helpful, then, well, good thing. So, win-win, right? So I did notice that we have a little bit of flash here in one of the locator holes there for the one of the side panels inside the cockpit there. So just need to clean that up. Just kind of looking it over to make sure that everything is what we would expect to see. Next up, it is a good idea to test fit all your parts. So we're going to go ahead and check the fit of this panel here. So I don't think we're going to have a lot to put together before we paint, but we'd like to paint as few small items as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these up. So I'm going to start off with this side, which would be the right side of the cockpit, making sure that everything's lined up. Put a little bit of Tamiya extra thin on it there, and that should hold it in place for us, no problem. So these panels have pins that go into some oblong slots. I guess that's so you can move these around a little bit. So I'm just using the flat blunt end of the tweezers there to make sure we're flush with the inside of this tub style cockpit there. So when it comes to the opposite side, I'll just kind of check it as well. Now normally for a Tamiya kit, you kind of expect everything to come out just right. However, right here you can probably tell it doesn't really fit exactly the way I think it should. So we're going to have to make a little adjustment there using my sanding stick. Kind of get that angle a little bit and then clean up the real corner of it there with the X-Acto knife. so that it fits nice and snug against that vertical cockpit bulkhead there. Just want to check and make sure that it seats properly. And when it does, we'll just go ahead and cement this one into place too. So it's at this point that I think it's probably a good idea to check the fit of our cockpit to the fuselage. Now, I don't want to glue our instrument cluster in, not at this point, because we're going to have to do some painting. So I'm just going to take some Tamiya masking tape here and kind of secure it into place, because otherwise it just keeps falling out. So with that done, let's go ahead and mock up our fuselage here. That means we're not going to glue it together at this point. We are just going to put our two fuselage halves together there. And then we'll take Tamiya masking tape and secure it. Now these fuselage halves do have the little locator pins and holes, except for up next to where the cowling's going to go. It only has one little locator there. So I just want to make sure that it is gap-free and securely fastened with this masking tape. That way we can drop our cockpit in. So the way Tamiya designed this cockpit is inserted from underneath, which really helps us in the long run if you stop and think about it. It'll be much easier to assemble our fuselage and then install our cockpit without having to worry about a lot of dust and stuff getting into the painted cockpit. And of course, there's nothing worse than having a instrument cluster or something that sits too high, and or the width of the parts for the cockpit holding us off when we oops, dropped that. Anyway, holding us off from closing up the fuselage. So there is this panel that goes on behind the cockpit there, and that's got a really nice fit. So as you probably saw, the instrument cluster is not going to be all that visible. Now we do have a small alignment issue here right above the instrument cluster there in the front of the cockpit. We can kind of push the fuselage halves into it actually lining up. So yeah, it's kind of stepped right there. And a little bit off in the front to rear alignment, but we can correct that with our technique when we go to glue these fuselage halves together. Of course, that'll be after painting, but that's something to keep in mind because we don't want to glue this thing up with the cockpit in there and then have to do a lot of sanding on that. Okay, so let's go back to our instructions here. What we're looking at is our color callouts here. There's XF63 and XF22. So most of the cockpit is in the XF63, which is German gray. And then, of course, we've got XF22, which is the RLM gray. So I am going to use a couple of highlighters here. I'm going to use the orange one here for the XF63, and we're just going to go through and mark all of these color callouts for the XF63 in orange, and then the XF22, I'm going to highlight those with the yellow. Kind of a light dark thing going on there because the XF22 is a lighter gray and the German gray, of course, is kind of dark. So what we're doing is we're just going to go through our entire instructions to identify all the items that we need to spray. That way, when we've got all of our paint mixed up and we're at the paint booth, we can go ahead and spray all these items in their appropriate color. So this will be the base color. And we're just looking at the interior stuff right now. So everything that needs to be sprayed, it's always easier to go ahead and organize it, even though that we're not in that step, but we can get all that stuff painted up. Let's go back and look at our instructions again, because there's probably some items other than those panels that we put into the cockpit that we can attach. So we've got our canopy crank here that we can install. Even though it's a different color, it's a small part, so that's not a problem. And also we have that strut there in our landing gear bay that we can put in. We also need to cut out these holes in the top section of the wings for our guns and pitot tube. And we also have our headrest there that goes inside the canopy. And we can attach that, kind of glue that up. But we're not going to glue it to the canopy, of course, because it'll just be easier if that's already assembled, and we can paint that up. So let's go ahead and put some of these parts together. I'll put the canopy crank slash wheel into place there. We can also put this strut in our landing gear bay. Just kind of cement that into place, making sure that everything fits nicely. We also have some exhausts here that goes in the bottom of the cowling there. So we're going to go ahead and put those in, because once we assemble the plane, of course, you're not going to be able to put those in. And we need to paint the fuselage with that already in there and the fuselage and wings already assembled. So we'll go ahead and put that in. And we can assemble our headrest and the supporting strut for it there. Just a little slot and tab kind of thing going on. But the one thing that we do need to do, once that Tamiya extra thin has set off, before it completely dries, we need to drop that into the canopy, because there are locator slots for those items to actually locate in. So we want to make sure that that is set exactly the way it's supposed to go. Now we're not going to glue this to the canopy. We're just using that kind of as a jig to make sure that that alignment's correct. So next up, we'll go ahead and clean out the little holes that we need to carve out. I don't know why they have us do this, but I guess maybe this kit has different variants probably, and they didn't need these little holes there in the leading edge of the wings. But for our kit, we are going to have that. So we need to trim those out and make sure everything fits nicely. Now, since this kit is a 1994 mold, they didn't have slide molding back then. So if we want our cannon barrels and gun barrels and everything to be more realistic and look like they could actually shoot something, we're gonna have to add those holes ourselves here. So being very careful and trying desperately not to stab myself, so, I do need to put a starter hole in the center of each and every one of our machine gun and cannon barrels. And once I've established that, I can take a small drill bit here, and we can just kind of drill these out a little bit. Kind of give it that three-dimensional look there, to try to make sure that our model is a lot more realistic than just a plastic toy. So when it comes to the guns that's in the fuselage that shoot right over top of the engine cowl there, we need to take care of those. And there are 2 guns on either wing that needs to be done. So that's a total of 6 that we need to drill out and fix. Also, our engine cowling here has a ring that we need to cement into place. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and get this ready for painting as well. because when it comes to all of the interior parts and inside the cockpit area, in the fuselage and the landing gear bays, all that is the XF22. So we're going to paint the inside of our engine cowl the same color. Now we need to go through and group everything together that we're going to spray and paint in their appropriate colors. So here you can see I've identified which one is dark, the 63 and 22 for the lighter there. And of course we've got our wings and our fuselage halves and all that. And then also our struts and strut supports, those get painted in the XF22 as well. So we're going to spray all of those at the same time. Now I didn't wash all of my parts like I should have before we started. So I'm going to use isopropyl alcohol. This is the 91% to kind of clean up all of our parts here. Just use a Q-tip or cotton bud if you prefer. And we're going to make sure that there's no release compound or anything on our parts. That way we have a much better opportunity for our paint to stick and not cause us any problems when we go to spray everything. So I'm just going to wipe everything down and get it ready for the paint booth. Let's take a look at a few photographs here of the cockpit of the FW190 here. And as you can see, we've got plenty of detail that lets us know what the cockpit looks like. And yes, some of these photographs are from museum pieces, and we know that you can't trust absolute colors when it comes to restorations and museums and so on and so forth. So if you want to be as accurate as possible, collect as many photographs as you can. That way you've got a better idea of what to do. Now on our model, we want to be as close to authentic as possible. However, there is always that controversy over this is correct and that's not, and so on and so forth. And we're not going to dive down into all that, but what we do want to see is especially the controls and the instrument cluster and all that, and what colors those are, so we can try to replicate all those fine details, because I think that's probably more important. And as you can see from all these photographs here, there's a multitude of different colors, multitude or plethora, either way. So, yeah. So we kind of got a free palette here as far as I'm concerned. Just remember that when you're painting in smaller scales, you need to change the colors just a little bit. You need to lighten them up because the detail will get drowned out if the colors are dark. So I'm going to kind of pick my colors to try to allow us to see some of the details there in the cockpit, if they're even visible at all. So I made myself up a paint card here, kind of a, what do you call them, a paint chip. So we got zinc gray and, well, all of our grays that I've got on hand here. And yeah, I've chosen a couple of grays that I want to use. So we got the charcoal gray there, which we're going to use for our cockpit. That's that one right there. And it is a water-based acrylic paint there, a craft paint. And as you can see, it's a little bit darker than what you can see on the bottle bit. And that's because when this paint dries, it's going to be a little bit different. And then next up is slate gray, which we're going to use for our RLM 22, which is a light medium gray. So those are the two paints that we're going to be spraying. And I have mixed these up for the airbrush. So I'm ready to go to the paint booth now and do some spraying. So here we are with everything painted up. And as you can see, that's our dark gray. And inside the cockpit, Tamiya calls out the floor section to be painted the lighter gray, the RLM 22, which we are just using that slate gray there for that. So I painted that by hand, so a little tricky to get down in there. And we also painted the inside of our landing gear bay doors there, the inside of the cockpit on the fuselage there. And we do have a hand wheel for the opening and closing of our canopy. That's supposed to be in the XF63, which is the dark gray, or the German gray. So we're just going to paint that back by hand here. Really easy to do. And I'm just using the same mixture that I used at the spray booth to do this. Probably take a couple of coats to take care of that. And I also need to mention that I did paint the inside of the landing gear bays themselves on the bottom side of the wings. So we're going to use this metallic galvanized tin, which is also a craft paint, water-based acrylic, to paint our rudder pedals. So we're going to give that a good coat. I think maybe this will give us a good opportunity for these pedals to be seen, although they are way down in the bottom of the cockpit and up underneath our instrument cluster. But if we're able to see anything, maybe this color will help bring that out. Now they should be an aluminum color. And while we're painting up details, I'm going to switch to the German dark gray here, which is a Vallejo water-based acrylic. And we're going to paint our cannons, which are inside the landing gear bay here. And we're going to paint it with this color. Now, the instructions call out for gunmetal, but I don't have any gunmetal. But I think that this is a good base color for these guns, and we'll highlight it with something a little bit later on. So we'll just go ahead and paint both these up. Now, Tamiya didn't provide us any decals for our instrument cluster, so, I mean, it is finely molded, and there is tick mark and little dial hands and everything molded into these gauges. But since we don't have a decal for that, we're going to have to paint that. So what we're using is the German dark gray, which is nearly a black color. Same color that we used on our guns in the landing gear bay, but I did add a lot of water to it, so it's kind of acting more like a panel liner in this case. And if I can just get it dropped into these rather deep recesses that we have for our gauges, it should flow around everything and kind of give us that black gauge face look that the original aircraft had, because all the faces on them were black except for the tick marks and of course the hands and indicators that were inside the gauges. So on our left and right panels of the cockpit there are some small details that need to be painted black as well, so we're going to use the German dark gray for that and kind of try to give a little bit more separation in the detail there, so maybe it'll be more visible down inside the cockpit. And this is one of the reasons why I chose a lighter gray than the German gray for the actual cockpit, so we'd be able to highlight some of these details. And the instructions do point a couple of items out for us to have painted in the XF1, which is the black. Yeah, so something like that. So we are using our reference photographs that we looked at earlier to actually kind of distinguish the different items that needed to be painted up. So there's a couple of little red things that we need to do, a knob and a a dial or something here on our dash. So we need to go ahead and get those painted red. And they are a rather small detail to paint. I'm just being as careful as I can. Try not to get paint everywhere, just on the items we want painted there. So we do have a couple of items that need to be painted yellow, so I'm just using this craft yellow paint here to do that with. One of them is a knob that you can see in the reference photographs that needs to go in. So we're going to paint that yellow. And we also have a handle here, which I think is our engine throttle that's molded into the side of the fuselage there that needs to be painted yellow. Now, as far as the bracket that is on it, I did paint that earlier with the German dark gray. So it give a little bit of contrast there. Sorry, I'm out of frame. But that tends to happen from time to time. Next up, I think I'm going to go ahead and paint this seat cushion here. Tamiya calls out khaki for that, so I do have khaki in the craft paint. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line it out, or trim it out, I should say, and then we'll just fill it in with the khaki there. Now our headrest has a cushion on it, and it needs to be painted in the well, what Tamiya calls red-brown. So we're just going to use this German red-brown here to take care of that. And that's also a Vallejo water-based acrylic. Let's take a look at our cushion here with that acrylic khaki paint on it there. It's kind of bright, so I think we need to do something about that. So I'm going to use the Tamiya brown panel liner here to do that. And it is a enamel-based product. And that will stain this paint since it's not protected. But that's kind of what we're going for. We want to kind of tone that down a little bit and kind of make it look a bit used. And there we go. That looks better. So, yeah. That'll be okay. So we need to seal everything in. And I'm going to use Vallejo's Gloss Acrylic Varnish, which is a water-based clear product. And of course I thin that out for my airbrush too. Now the reason why we're doing this is we're going to prepare everything for the use of some panel liner. And that flows over and won't stain our paint job. So with that applied, we're ready for our panel liner. Now I'm going to be using the Tamiya black. That'll give us the best opportunity there to kind of pull out all those little details that kind of hide in the paint and kind of give our model more of a three-dimensional look there. So I'm using a long brush to apply this, and as you can see, I'm kind of getting it all over the place. But that's all right. We're applying this enamel product over top of an acrylic, which the acrylic is going to protect our painted surface, and it'll make cleanup much easier. And I'm kind of showing you this over the lighter gray so that you can actually see better in the video how that affects the total look of the parts. Of course, we'll be doing this throughout the cockpit area and the instrument cluster and all that. But I thought since we got the panel liner out, let's just go ahead and do everything that we have painted up. Now once that dries, we can use enamel thinner to clean up all those little ugly spots that I got all over the place there. And that's going to happen. Not that big of a deal. I'm just going to start off with a Q-tip here for my cleanup. So a little bit of thinner, and if you've got too much on it, you're going to kind of want to dab some of that off because we don't want to dissolve the panel liner that's down into the little nooks and crannies and cracks and all that stuff where we actually want it to stay. And as you can see here, it kind of acts just like an eraser, and it really does a good job of cleaning these parts up. Now, if you're not using panel liners, you can really bring up the detail in your model by using it. So if you're new to modeling and you haven't given panel liner a try, I highly recommend you doing so. That way you can fully benefit from all the detail that the kit manufacturers put into our parts here. Now, looking at our pilot, the only really good detail that's molded on the pilot is the pilot's face. All the rest of it is, well, it's really, really poor. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to use it. Mr. Pilot, I'm going to toss you aside and we're just going to have to do something else. Which means we're going to have to make some seat belts because the pilot had the seat belts molded in. So I'm just checking to see if this 1 millimeter wide masking tape from Tamiya can substitute as seat belts. So as you can see there, it is near perfect. I think that's going to be okay because 1/48 scale is kind of small. So I think we're going to use that and simulate some seat belts. So one of the things our seat belts have is some little metal details, you know, buckles and connection points and everything. We're not going to make all of that. So I've got some really small wire here that I'm going to use. So this is a strand of wire stripped out of some 18 gauge automotive electrical wire. It's really small, but I think we can make some of these small details with that. Now it's not going to be perfect, and of course you could always get some aftermarket seat belts, either photo etch or whatever else they make them out of nowadays. And as you can see, that's a really small part that we're going to be using. So we're going to need a few of those and then maybe kind of a square buckle too. Now I don't remember ever having to make seat belts before, so this might be a first. But maybe I did. I don't remember. But yeah, since our pilot already had his seat belts molded in, Tamiya didn't mold any seat belts in for us. And there are no decals for it in the kit. So we're just going to, you know, make them ourselves. And as you can see, I've already got the shoulder harnesses in place, and I put those little pieces of wire to simulate the buckles and the attachment points for it. And now we're doing the lap belts, trying to kind of get it laying in a natural position where you kind of expect the seat belt to be laying in the seat. I'm really not concerned about where the seat belts lap over the side of the seat itself. We're going to kind of secure that with a little bit of CA glue, and we use CA glues on the opposite ends as well. We don't want these things coming loose later on. Of course, we'll be using CA glue to attach our metal hardware, so need to put in a small buckle. Well, actually two buckles. One a triangular piece, and then I kind of bent a more of a square, more of a square piece for the opposite side to kind of simulate, you know, the connection point for the harness. So we just got to get these into place, and they are small and difficult to maneuver. Once we get them set down and right where we want them, and that's the main reason why I'm using medium CA glue. It gives us a chance to actually correct our alignment issues before it grabs hold there. Now, in most all the reference photos that I've seen, these seat belts are a really light linen color. We're just going to use our khaki to paint these in. Sometimes they appear almost white in nature there, but I think maybe white's a bit bright, so this is one of those decisions that you have to make. So I've decided just to paint it khaki, and that's the same color that we used for the seat cushion, although we did darken the seat cushion with brown panel liner. So we're going to get these painted up, and of course it is quite a chore to do because they are rather small, and as you can imagine, it's even more difficult when you're trying to actually video it while you're trying to paint. So I hope I'm not making too big of mistakes here. When it comes to the buckles and the metal hardware, we're just going to use that galvanized tin that we used on our rudder pedals. We're going to use the same color there for our buckles, and we'll just paint those as well, trying to not get this silver color on anything else. And as you can see, I'm being really careful to brace my hands so that I've got complete control of my, or as complete control as I can get of my paintbrush here, to kind of minimize any cleanup later. So I did come in with a pencil and tried to do some stitching. So obviously I'll never be a seamstress, so that'll be okay. So now we need to get everything ready for spraying again, because we need to seal everything in, all the panel liner and our belts and all that stuff. So we're going to be using the Vallejo matte acrylic to give that soft, flat tone back to all of our paint. And of course, I do thin mine out for my airbrush. Now, depending upon your method of application, you'll have to adjust that. And once that dries, we'll be able to go ahead and kind of finish up our instrument cluster here. So our gauges need some help, and I'm going to use this UV resin to kind of give them the gauges a glossy lens cover look kind of thing going on there. Now this is the first time I've used this, so if it doesn't work out, I will be disappointed. But one of you guys recommended that I actually do this after I messed up that searchlight on our tugboat. You told me that I needed to get with the program and use some UV resin. So that's that's what we're doing here. So I'm using a toothpick as my applicator to kind of drop it into these rather deep recesses for our gauges. And then we'll use the UV light to harden it. So I'm not really worried too much about my lamp overhead, which is supposed to be good for reading and everything. It's supposed to be low UV. So hopefully it doesn't harden on the card before I can use it. And it seems to be working fine here. So we use our UV light and get those lower ones set. That way I'm not sticking my finger in it when I flip the instrument cluster around, so that we can do the top gauges there. So it is kind of an art form, dropping this resin in place. I mean, it would be nice if I could get all of them to have a slight convex look, but I'm afraid some of them are probably going to come out a little flat. I just don't really want it to be concave in shape. So, yeah, and I have no idea why I'm waving the UV light around. It's just kind of it's like I'm spray painting or something. I don't know. I don't think it helps. So there we are. So we got our gauges a little glossy there. Yeah, not sure exactly how much is going to be seen once everything's assembled. So next up, we're going to assemble our cockpit. I'm using the thick Tamiya cement for that. And we'll start off with our rudder pedals there. Get them pressed down into place. Then we can drop in the pilot control stick. And I'm using the same thick cement for that. And that thick cement gives us time to actually maneuver the part around and make sure everything's lined up. Now, once it sets up, it's going to be very secure. And then, of course, I'm using the same cement for the seat. And I think you can tell that it is kind of a snug fit there. That's why I wasn't really worried about those attachments of the seat belts on either side of the seat. And when it comes to our instrument cluster, I am going to scrape a little bit of excess paint there off of the connection points. That way I don't have to worry about the instrument cluster coming apart. Now, I didn't do that for the seat and for the joystick or flight control stick. That's like a video game joystick. Or the rudder pedals, because those all fit pretty snug. But we just want to make sure that our instrument cluster can't come loose in the cockpit, and it is center and it's standing vertical, which is what it's supposed to be. Now, as you can probably tell from the pencil in the pictures here, this cockpit is rather small. So it's not going to be a whole lot that we're going to be able to see through the cockpit, especially if we go with a closed canopy. But I think maybe the details that we added will be visible through it, and you'll be able to pick that out when you're looking at the model once it's completed. So yeah, that's our cockpit. And I did use a little bit of polishing powder. I don't know if you can tell. On the edges of the seat and just inside the cockpit a little bit, just to kind of make some rubbed areas, you know. I don't know how much that's going to be visible once the aircraft is completely assembled, but we'll probably be able to see our seat belts. So if nothing else, there's that. So yeah, I think that's pretty much indicative of European fighters back in the day during World War II. They didn't have a lot of room in them. And these aircraft were relatively small compared to the big beasts that the U.S. was making, like the P-47 and the F-4U Corsair. And, you know, those aircraft are rather large in comparison. So it'd be nice to do a little, maybe a little size comparison there when we get around to building a P-47. So just to see how big those were. Yeah, so that's going to do it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And yeah, if you're new to the channel, I hope today I earned your subscription. So we'll continue on with this build in part 2. Look for that next Friday. So I got some work to do. So until I see you guys again, stay safe.